Good morning, children. How are you? Okay, you must be fine. See, last day, what had we discussed? It was the Cold War era. Okay, from the book Contemporary World Politics. Fine. So, what have we discussed in the Cold War era? Basically, the beginning of the Cold War, and in particular about Cuban Missile Crisis. Fine, children. Cuban Missile Crisis, as the role had been played by both the head of the states, American head of the states, and Soviet Union, head of the states of the Soviet Union. Be that Mr. Nikita Khrushchev, be that Mr. John F. Kennedy. Good sense had been prevailed by both of these leaders that they avoided this condition, and what seemed imminent, the stage was all set for the another world war with their clever and genuine thinking. They avoided a certain world war. Fine, children? And it was not a hot war or a shooting war, it was not a full scale war. We have discussed these things. But simultaneously, we also discussed that Cold War was not simply a power rivalry. It was simply not a matter of power rivalries of military alliances or of balance of power, along with military rivalries, military alliances, balance of power. It was also a real ideological conflict. Fine, children? What we ended last day, yesterday, our discussion with that the world got the two group, two sides, two alliances rather, Western Alliance that has been represented by the US, headed by the US, and it represented the ideology of liberal democracy and capitalism. Okay, Western Alliance. Another hand, Eastern Alliance headed by the Soviet Union, and it represented or it was committed to the ideology of socialism and communism. Okay, no confusion? Fine. Now we are moving to head. Today we are moving ahead to discuss what exactly is Cold War. So the topic or the heading I had given today, what is the Cold War? Fine, children. See, the Second World War, okay, or the end of World War Two. How was it important? Very first thing, that it was a landmark in contemporary world politics. It was a landmark development. What exactly happened in the year 1945? This war, Second World War ended, and as a result, Allied forces, yes, children, Allied forces, there were two sides of this world war also, or any war must have or used to be two sides. So here one side was the Allied forces. Allied forces were led by the US, Britain, France, Soviet Union, etc. And another side we had Axis powers. Axis forces, rather, we used to say it, Axis forces or Axis powers. These were led by Germany, Italy, and Japan. Fine. Duration altogether we know of the Second World War from 1939 to 1945. Clear? So, end took place with the defeat of Axis forces by the Allied forces, or Axis powers by the Allied forces. Fine? Now, this war, Second World War, I mean, had also involved almost all the major powers of the world. That's why it got the name, even children, World War. Had it not been the case, had it not involved all major parts of the world, it must not have got the name World War. And it spread out to regions outside Europe. It was not confined till Europe only, children. Spread outside the Europe, okay, including our continent, Southeast Asia, China, Myanmar, and some parts of our India's northeast even. In terms of its devastation, loss of life, it was unlimited. Okay, maximum devastation took place due to this World War Second, due to the Second World War, be it the loss of human lives, be it the loss of or destruction of or devastation of civilian property, children. Okay, First World War we have seen. You must be well aware between 1914 and 1918 First World War took place, and the casualties what we had in the First World War, by the time it was maximum when Second World War started, and it ended when we started going through that what all had been lost by us. Then Second World War surpassed the loss of life and of civilian property manifold as compared to First World War. Fine, children? Okay. Now, this end of the Second World War, it paved the way to the beginning of the Cold War. Means Second World War ended and the Cold War began. Ending of this Second World War, or this ended when, we all are well aware, United States of America, the United States. What did it do exactly? Dropped 2 atom bombs on the Japanese cities, two cities of Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It was August 1945, children. 2 atom bomb with code name Little Boy and Fat Man. With these two code names, 2 atom bombs had been dropped. And at last Japan had to surrender. Okay? See, this is the one view. Or we are well aware. Critiques of this decision of US to drop atom bombs, they are telling that there was no need to drop atom bomb. And we know atom bomb must not be used. Okay. And the critics here, they are telling that there was no need to drop atom bomb, it was useless. And they further argued that the US knew that Japan is going to surrender. Japan was about to surrender. In that case, if your enemy nation is going to surrender and you got the information, then you must not have decided to drop something like atom bomb, isn't it? So they are telling that it was a useless step, but what does it intend in fact? So they were of clear mind that it was unnecessary to drop the 2 atom bombs. Now they are telling that US action in fact intended something. Further, they went on suggesting that the US action was intended to stop the Soviet Union. Are you getting my point? They're telling that this US action was intended to stop the Soviet Union from making military and political gains in Asia and elsewhere. Means no advancement, no gains, be it military gains, be it political gains, could be made by Soviet Union. They wanted Soviet Union to stop. Simultaneously, they also wanted to show Moscow that the United States was supreme. They wanted to show the Soviet Union that the US is supreme. US is supreme power. This was the one view. Means the critics they are telling. Now, from the sides of the US supporters, their views were certainly different. They told or they tried to justify this step or the action taken by the US. They told that it was necessary to end the war quickly. They're telling it that dropping of atom bombs was necessary to end war quickly and to stop further loss of American and Allied lives. They are telling that we were having maximum loss, we are also having casualty, you are also having loss. So our loss must come to an end. Our lives of the Allied forces, lives of the Allied people must come to an end. That's why it was necessary step and they tried to justify it. Now, if we just try to get rid of these arguments, counter arguments, means the material of these motives or the intentions, whatever be the motives and intentions. If we go to consequence, what had been the consequence of the Second World War? So the consequence of the end of this Second World War, one thing was certain, that it gave the rise, or it was the rise of two new powers on the global stage, on the world stage. No one can deny the fact. If any one of you don't agree, then you raise your hand and say, why are you against it? You speak out. You give your logic. I hope that you all are convinced. This is the fact. That irrespective of a material of the motives, the consequence of the end of the Second World War was the rise of two new powers on the world stage, on the global stage, and because Germany has been defeated, so with the defeat of Germany and Japan, Japan both had been defeated. Japan was the worst victim. The devastation of Europe and in many other parts of the world, America, the United States, and the Soviet Union, they became the greatest powers in this world, on this planet. And with their ability, with the ability to influence events anywhere on this planet Earth, they became so powerful, they became so influensive that they were capable to influence any events or events taking place anywhere on this planet Earth. Are you getting my point? Yes. Fine. Now, because the Cold War was an outcome of the emergence of US and USSR as the two superpowers, undoubtedly. While the Cold War, and certainly the Cold War was an outcome of the emergence of the US and the USSR, America and Russia, Soviet Union rather, as two superpowers, and they were arch rival of each other. They were rival to each other. It was also rooted, and it was also known, and another thing that was inherent in the understanding that the destruction caused by the use of atom bombs, which, or by the time, it is too costly for any country to bear. No country can bear the destruction caused by the atom bomb. So, here the logic is very powerful. When two rival powers are in possession of nuclear weapons, when the two rival powers are in possession of the nuclear weapons, a full-fledged war is quite unlikely. A full-fledged war won't take place because that they are capable of inflicting death and destruction unacceptable to each other. So, a full-fledged war, a hot war, a shooting war won't take place. And provocations, you may say that if there would be enough provocations, in spite of provocations, children, neither side would want to risk war. Neither side would wish to risk war since no political gains. See, if they're taking the risk, there would be some political gains. But no political gains would justify the destruction of their society. Suppose you are having enough political gains, but you are finding no one who would enjoy those political gains, the territories, the money, the material. No one. That's why No political gains could justify the destruction of their societies. Here we say it the logic of deterrence. We are going to elaborate it, this logic of deterrence. In case of a nuclear war, okay, both the sides. Fortunately, the world had not seen the use of the nuclear war by both the sides. But suppose a imaginary condition of a nuclear war, both sides will be so badly harmed that no side would be in position to declare one side or the other as the winner. Even if sometimes we see it that one of them tries to attack and disable the nuclear weapons of its rival, okay, of its rival powers. Nowadays we do have the advanced weapons, advanced technology. Okay, suppose they are doing it, they are able or they find successful themselves in disabling the nuclear weapons of its rival. The other would be still left with enough nuclear weapons to inflict unacceptable destruction. That's why, children, exactly we said the logic of deterrence, that both sides, okay, have capacity, are capable, both sides have capability to retaliate against an attack and to cause so much destruction that neither can afford to initiate the war. Okay, neither can afford to initiate the war, isn't it? So what can be told by us, that this is the best part, the logic of deterrence, and we say this is the logic of deterrence. Just like we say, like the showing teeth of elephant. So nuclear weapons are just like that. Fine, children? Now, the Cold War, in spite of being an intense form of rivalry, we can say that. Thus, the Cold War, in spite of being an intense form of rivalry between two great powers, it remained cold and not hot or shooting war. Okay, this was the best possible outcome. That Cold War remained cold and it didn't become, it never became a hot or a shooting war. So the deterrence relationship prevents war, but how can it prevent rivalry? No. Rivalry between powers can't be prevented, but deterrence relationship, their best outcome, that at least they are preventing the war. Fine, children? Now, if we go on to see the military features of this Cold War, the two superpowers and the countries in the rival blocs led by the superpowers, they were having enough or immense responsibility. They were expected to behave as a responsible actors, as a rational actors, because in their hand, not only the peace and harmony, in their hand, the entire life of the living beings on this planet Earth used to concentrate, used to be there. That's why they need to be rational, they need to be responsible, and rational and responsible in the sense that they understood the risks in fighting wars. They knew the risk in fighting wars that might involve the two superpowers, and just imagine when the two superpowers are involved and the blocks led by them are in a deterrence relationship. Blocks with them are in deterrence relationship, and the two superpowers, they are there fighting wars, will be massively destructive. Because superpowers, they decide to start a war, they are supporting countries, they are allied countries. How can they prevent themselves? So it will be a massive destruction, children. That's why, what can we say? That responsibility is a term, is a word. It meant, responsibility meant restrained and avoiding the risk of another world war. This was the best possible outcome of this entire Cold War era, entire Cold War period. And what can we say as a concluding remark? That in this sense, the Cold War managed to ensure human survival. Okay, so many thanks to the Almighty that the head of the states of these two superpowers during the entire Cold War faced during the entire Cold War era, they always kept the basics intact. They never allowed to be a full-fledged war, a hot war, or a shooting war. Okay, so it remained a cold, means Cold War remained cold. In this sense, Cold War managed to ensure, and it ensured human survival. Okay, hope you must have enjoyed the lesson, children. Any doubt you do have, must ask. Fine? Okay. By the time, take care, stay safe, have a good day.